Hello, Marina. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I am great. I'm so excited to talk to you. We were just chatting a little bit before we started, but very little because I don't like to get to know people off the show. I like to get to know people on the show if I can. But I did get a little context because your recommendation from our friend Sophia.
Yes,
She
yes, she
she
was my roommate in school.
I love that. We have to give some credit where credit's due. She's definitely why you're here, but I'm so excited that you're here because you and I have the same piece of paper that says we graduated from the School of Drama at School of the Arts in directing. But
Parentheses, directing.
parentheses directing, we're that parenthetical baby. And it's we're 9 years apart in that program, I think, because you're class of 2022 and I'm
Yeah.
2013. So I was the last directing student of Gerald Friedman, and you're in the Scott Ziegler era.
Yeah.
So we're going to get
Different
into that a little
generations.
bit. Yeah, very different. But we don't know each other at all. We've never even spoken before today, other than some email. So that's the context of what we're starting in with everybody. So I'll ask you my first question, which is a fun one, given that I already know the answer, but we're going to talk about it. Where are you from, dear?
I'm from São Paulo, Brazil.
And when did you come to the States? At what point?
7 years ago, so 2016.
Did you come exclusively to go to School of the Arts?
No, so I was actually enrolled in university here in Brazil. I'm currently in Brazil, so I'll refer to here as in
Yeah.
Brazil. I was studying social sciences here, and I always loved theater. I did some programs previously in Brazil, theater related, but not directing.
When you say social
And
sciences, I think my brain thinks it knows what that means, but I'm not sure it
yeah,
does. What did that
it,
mean for you at the time?
it's not the same. It's not the same name in the US. So it's social sciences. It's usually about politics, sociology, anthropology, and methods of research. So those four subjects are within the social science realm. So all of those are included.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. That's
So I
kind
was
of
doing
like,
that.
yeah, continue.
Yeah. Yeah, I was doing that and then decided to took a gap year and go to New York to study theater there and ended up staying. And then 2 years after that, went to North Carolina because I realized I wanted to study directing.
Let's back up a little bit because I'm a little bit dog with a bone and talking to you about directing after I left and with Scott and how everything's different, all that stuff. I'm going to get to that, but I don't want to rush it. So let me step back a little bit here. You're growing up in Brazil. What is the dynamic like at home? Family? What are we doing to make money for the family? Or we got siblings? Some of those questions.
Yeah, I have, we are four in total, two brothers and one sister.
Okay.
I'm the youngest, the caçula
Baby.
in Portuguese.
What's up?
Yeah. Yay. And I mean, I think it was a good dynamic. My parents are still together. I grew up primarily with one of my brothers because the other two are from another marriage, so they're way older than me.
Okay.
Yeah, so good. They both my parents were supportive of me pursuing theater. My mom way more than my dad. He wanted me to continue with the social science studying, but
what does dad do?
Ultimately, so he actually also graduated in the social science program.
Oh, there you go. I was gonna say,
but he had a wild trajectory. He started right after high school studying business, and then decided to stop right before graduating, and then moved to Europe and was there for decades. Lived on a boat, had the first vegetarian restaurant in Brazil, like started the first vegetarian restaurant in Brazil, and a yoga school in Brazil.
Wow.
And then And then when he was in his 40s, that's when he did social sciences.
Got
And
it.
then started a construction company. Yes. And that's
Wow.
what he does now. Yes.
What is that's what he still does?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it seems like time-wise, and I may be calculating wrong, but like that construction company sounds like that's been going on for a very long time.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
That's
like
the one that
decades.
kind of stuck of all the different shit that he kind of tried out.
Yeah, probably the thing that gave him some money to start a family. So
right. Yeah, and once you got that family, your let's try something else out goes a little bit differently. If at all. If at all. That's cool. So what are the older siblings doing in your footsteps, or, you know, what footsteps are you kind of following and what are they interested in? Are they playing sports? Are they doing art stuff or?
So my, the brother that is just above me in age, Martin, he studies physics.
Wow.
He's
smart fella.
pretty smart. But yeah, he's in Switzerland right now getting his PhD.
Were you good at that kind of stuff when you were growing up? Were you good at like physics and chemistry and shit like that?
I was in the arts.
So people can do both, but I do like to ask just in case someone's. You know what's weird to me is when you go to school of the arts, you meet some of those weirdos, which I love those people. Like you get there. This is the thing that would always blow my mind is I was always very much performance based. You know, I kind of moved around and, you know, there's some directing and acting and kind of did different stuff, but I also kind of like lighting and stuff. But my thing was all very like verbal and kind of visual and I like music and stuff like that. But like I could never draw. I felt like if you could draw and you were a good performer, that was like unfair. Because I was like, you can't have the extrovert and the introvert talent. One or the other. That's fair, yeah. And then I got to school of the arts and some of my best friends who are some of my favorite actors can like
knew how to draw.
They draw like beautiful cartoons or like their own comic books and stuff. And I'm like, fuck you, man. Come on. Now you're hoarding talent, and that's not fair. You're not allowed to be so good at so many other things. Are you good at other stuff? Do you play instruments or do you have other things you feel like you really is your area other than directing is kind of a weird skill. It's more of a group of skills than like a single thing. Yeah, it is weird. I mean, I do know how to draw. Sorry. I'm not, but you went directing. So were you acting before or have you been directing for a while? No, okay. So, see, then you got the introvert skill set, drawing, theorizing, planning. That's all kind of in the same thing. Can you act? No acting. I'm very bad at it. Yes. Which is so sad because you have both on the paper, do you not? Doesn't it say acting, directing? Mine says acting, directing. No, mine doesn't because I'm from the different generation in which my program was totally about directing. Yeah. Let's get into it. Okay, so we're caught up now. To you going to New York. And what was the draw to go to New York as far as like just specifically, did you go just like pack a bag or did you say you went to like a program or something? I did go to a program. That's the part of my story that I kind of like don't love talking about it because I hated the program, but I was there because that's where the theater immigrants go to in the US. They go to a couple of schools that accept you very easily. And they give you a visa, which is the main thing. Yeah, you got to get the ticket. Yeah. So I went to Strasbourg Institute. I was there for 2 years. I also did some other stuff, especially with Theater of the Oppressed in New York. They have a really big group there, but my visa was related to Strasbourg. So I was there for 2 years in that. Let me try to help get some helpful information while also like kind of not digging too deep or making anyone sound like a jerk here. While you were there, what about that program or that project or whatever, it got you there to New York. So that's a plus. We like that. But you got into it. You said you didn't care for it. Without trying to be as objective as possible, why didn't it work for you? Maybe someone was an asshole or something, whatever. We can leave that aside. But like training wise, or the reason you went to learn, why did that not click? And then maybe that's part of the conversation of why you chose to go in other directions for your education?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that, I mean, in general, it felt like one of the schools in New York that are simply able to exist because they accept a ton of immigrants. You know what I
Volume.
mean? Yeah, volume. And so it doesn't never felt like there was a lot of rigor and training and substance holding the school. You know, what was holding the school and to maintaining school was their capacity to give immigrants visas, which is good. But if you're there to study and to learn and to practice, then it's just not,
It sounds like American public
exciting.
school.
Yeah.
It does. No, it really
Yeah.
does, because American public school only exists the way that it does on the backs of the fact that there's so many kids to draw taxes from, which pays for the schools. And like, because it's so populated, the money is there. And what you end up with are these classrooms where there's like 40 kids to one teacher, and you're not really learning. They're up there giving a speech, and then the class is over in 40 minutes and you're on to the next. And it's like, what's the point of any of this? It really seems like it just exists to push us in, push us out. You're not worried
Yeah.
about if we learn.
And the thing is, and I say this knowing that it works for a lot of people. Like a lot of people really, and I have a lot of friends.
That's kind of what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, most of them who is Strasbourg, as a lot of the studios in New York, is also part of the NYU training. So have a really, really close friend from Brazil who went through Strasbourg, but in the NYU program, and she, really loves it. So I know so many people who really appreciated the training. So I think all of this knowing that, hey, it works for people. But I think for me, what I noticed with time was that it was just felt a little too indulging. It didn't, like in the acting training, it felt like it was training actors to center in themselves too much and not, you know, open up to what was happening in the scene and, the circumstances and whatever. So with time, I just started feeling a little tired of that, but couldn't leave because I had to stay for my visa. You know what I mean? So it's always that, like, yeah.
So then how do you end up in North Carolina? And what I'm very interested in is someone in New York already involved in other training programs. And I know you've not grown up in America, but a lot of American students at the same age you must have been. How old are you right now? Do you mind if I ask?
25.
Right. So other American students at that same age are like pushing to get in a cool program in New York associated with NYU, even if they don't know what that means. That's like a thing they're trying to get to. You're at it. Doesn't work for you. You make a choice to go to North Carolina, which in America, if people don't know about that school, are like, what are you doing? Why would you leave New York City, period, to go there? So what do you hear about this school? What draws you to it? What is that process, and what do you know about this place before you end up there?
So I knew before, even knowing and doing research on UNCSA, I first knew that I wanted to go to college. That was
Okay.
I wanted a college degree, in my life. I
Sure.
knew that because I always loved school. Years from now, I think I'm going to want to get a master's. So I knew I wanted to get that done. So I knew that. I knew that I wanted to do directing at this time. And I realized that, that's where I'm going with theater. So then I started doing research on directing schools, directing programs. And there aren't a lot in the US, let alone in Brazil.
Right.
So it's still very few for undergrad. So UNCSA was in that pool of the few schools that offer that. So then I applied to probably most of them. And the two ones that I, in the pool, in the school that I was accepted and the ones that I was most excited for were UNCSA and UCLA.
What made you excited about NCSA based on what you knew at the time?
I went to the accepted students weekend. I I think I felt, I used to say, what I didn't feel in Strasbourg, which was that was a real place, like where people went to actually practice something and not just to be in Winston-Salem. You know what I mean? As they were in New York, just
Though
because
there are
it's in,
so many reasons to be in
to be in
Winston-Salem and to
Winston-Salem.
get a ticket to live in the Triad. I mean, my God.
And that's, I think, I felt from all the teachers, from all the students, that of course people were being real and like they're good and bad and all of that, but they were there for a reason. They chose that school. It was nothing beyond the program, because
Right.
it was Winston-Salem.
Because there's no other reason to be there. Let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's horrible.
We don't have to. No, it's not.
Great.
No, it's not. I do a podcast, and I've done one for almost 10 years, that is about the school and about Winston-Salem. So if either of those entities have shit to say to me, come on, okay? I'm selling your city and your town every week. So I don't even, all right? But let's be honest. It ain't the fucking Paris of North Carolina. We're not going there for the cuisine or the culture.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a regular city.
Hard.
Like so many regular, lovely cities in America.
Yeah, and it was hard. I remember when I arrived, for when I had already decided to commit to the school, and when I went there for my first year, I was sad. Like I was like miserable because it was just
quiet,
far away. Yeah, it was the first time that I felt like culture shock, because in New York there's so many immigrants that you kind of don't feel it.
You blend into the tapestry.
Blend in. Yeah, but in Winston-Salem, I felt it hard, and I was the only international student in the drama school, not even in my program, in the entire drama school. So, yeah. So it was tough, but I definitely loved the program. Like, I don't think I would have a better education anywhere else. At least what it was for me, a good education. What it worked for me.
So let's talk about the program then, and you're going to have to kind of be the, you're going to have to bear the brunt of my ignorance, because I don't know the answer to these questions, as I so often do when I talk to people that go to school. Is the idea is that we have a common language and stuff. But the program that I graduate, I'll give a little context. I don't want to jump ahead too hard here for anyone who might be listening, because you're a little bit younger than I am. I will go so far as to say 10 years. And I know there are people listening to this show that are closer to my age, but a lot of people are going to be listening to this episode because they're your age. And so I'll give that specific context, and we can kind of go back and forth on this, because you don't really, I would imagine, know that much about what it was like to be at school when I was there. Only so much, right?
Yeah, very little.
And vice versa. I don't know shit about what it was like. I met Scott once in LA. That's it. So I would never even got a chance to go to the school. I'm going to be there later this month for the homecoming thing, but I never got a chance to, haven't had a chance to visit. And of course, with COVID happening in the middle of the time that you're there, which we'll also talk about, it limits the amount of engagement. But let's talk about how it's structured a little bit, because you applied to the school knowing it's a directing program. At what point did they switch to a full directing program? Because what I came from, I was the last graduate of the program that Gerald Friedman ran for like 22 years. So the way it worked for a really long time, and if you meet a directing student, of which he started the directing program, there wasn't one before that. It was all actors. So he came up with what his version of a directing program was. And unless they graduated really recently, if you meet a drama director from NCSA, of which there are plenty over decades, we all learn the same shit from the same guy. So then that changed, because it had to. I was the last one to get that training. When Gerald created that program, his idea was, and I don't want to misquote, so I'll do my best here because I'm not him, but the idea was to build on the acting training. And the idea was that in his mind, he was working with a very old model. To be a great director, you really do have to understand acting in a really fundamental way. Like, you need to get it. You need to understand what they're doing, or who are you the fuck to tell them what to do? I really resonate with that everywhere. I don't like the idea of supervisors who have never done the work they're supervising. I don't think it's a bad idea. So his program was only a 2-year program, and it was kind of genius because it really was a graduate program. Gerald's directing program was a master's degree. The only thing is you don't get a master's degree when you graduate, but you get a master's degree while you're getting your bachelor's degree. And when you leave, your paper may say one thing, but you got double school. And I loved that. I had a weird experience because listeners of this show know I started in D&P. I was originally a lighting designer. I spent a year in town getting in-state tuition so I could lower my cost. Fell in love with the drama school. Go listen to past episodes and hear the full story of I end up in drama and directing. But I did my whole first year in D&P. I did my whole second year as an actor, knowing I would be a director, which is like not a fucking thing. Because he didn't allow people into the program as first years knowing they were going to be a director. You don't get to decide that yet. That happens in between second and third year. There would be sometimes international, but definitely transfer students in that third year. And then for the last 2 years of your 4-year program as an acting ensemble, you'd have these like directors that transferred in, and they would come get a 2-year degree that would count as another bachelor's degree from them after they had already gone somewhere else. So I was kind of a weird hybrid. No one had ever come in as a director as a second year. That wasn't a thing. It was so weird because the first and second year are so acting focused. So it's hard for me to wrap my brain around being a director from day one and what your program was like as far as how much are you in acting class, singing, dancing, whatever. Are you taking any of that versus how much are you taking versus the actors? And then if you're not, what is that other time filled with? Pardon me. What is that other time filled with as a director? What classes are you taking in the beginning?
Well, I do think that, it's not, at least from what I hear, my program wasn't that different from yours in terms of my involvement in the acting classes, because we did have to, and I agree that made all the difference for me. Totally. Like for instance, our first year, I think we had 1 or 2 directing classes. Everything else was with the actors. So we just had 2 more classes than the actors,
Did you have them in place of something? Like they had an extra singing and you took that? I mean, I can't imagine you guys had literally have more classes than they do.
We did. We totally did. We were in rehearsals since first year. And, actors are only in rehearsal starting third year. At least that's how it works now.
So in the evenings, let me get this straight. In the evenings, when you're a first year student, your acting class is done and they go off and work on their scenes for class.
Yeah.
And you're going to rehearsal starting first year. In what capacity? What are you doing there? And in rehearsals? How many ADs does each production have?
Depends. Can have up to I had 1 that it was me and 2 that it was me and someone else. So either 1 or 2.
Never usually more than 2.
Because it's only 2 directors per year. So.
Is that a rule across the board?
Yeah, I didn't know this was different. Yeah, they only do. They used to do 1 or 2, and now I think they're trying to do 2, so they have a friend.
I can't imagine doing it alone. I would not sign up for that.
Yeah,
if I didn't have a peer, did you have a fellow directing student?
I did. Yeah.
Oh, thank Christ! Oh my God! No, there were 4 of us. I wanted more, but I understood. I think at most there were 2 different years in the time Gerald did it where he had 5. And those were late. And he was like, no more. That can't do 5. It's too many. Not because of it's great to have them on as ADs all year, but when they have their projects at the end of the year and there's like 5 in each class, now there's 10 directing projects to both produce and go to. It's too much.
That was the same thinking, I think.
I would personally, if I was doing it, I think 3 is the soft spot. I think that's the sweet little zone to be in because first of all, you need the staff. So when I was there, obviously it was only 3rd and 4th years, and they each had different titles. So only the 4th years could be assistant directors. You had to be a senior in the directing program to be an AD, and the AD
different.
Is the right hand of the director, taking notes. They're the AD. The third years would get assigned underneath the AD as a directing intern. So each show would have a director, a fourth year AD, and a third year directing intern. And the directing intern, shut the fuck up. That's your job. Be quiet, stay out of the way, watch, take notes, do anything that's asked of you. You're like a PA on a film set. Like, don't start having ideas and contributions. That's not why you're there. You're lucky if as a fourth year AD, you can get the ear of the director and get some thoughts in and contribute and collaborate. And that fully just depends on the director, because you might have a guest director who's like, not interested in your thoughts, know what I'm doing, take the notes, shush.
Yeah, and I think that's still similar.
Those people,
I
am so grateful for. I don't know about you. I'm sure you assisted a lot of people in 4 fucking years of being a director's assistant, because God, that's a long time to do that. Good training. But did you prefer people who let you collaborate, or you like to just watch and learn?
I appreciated both. I mean, because I actually didn't have that many AD assignments, but that's the other thing that was new. So there was this, and I think it's over now, but there was this program called Studio for Creative Practice. And it was, did you ever meet Molly Maxner?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. She was in the directing program just a few years ahead of me. So we overlapped, not at the same time, but no, I know Molly for sure.
So Molly, she's not at UNTC anymore, but she was there. It felt like she graduated with me, with my class, because she left when we left. But just, she was there teaching, obviously, but just in our hearts. So she started this program called Studio for Creative Practice, which was a space for students from all different schools to get together and collaborate. So you could do that instead of, and the hours were evening hours. So you could do that instead of being a rehearsal if you wanted to. And I did it for 2 consecutive years. So I did that for my 3rd and 4th year. So I really only AD'd for my 1st and 2nd.
And what are you doing in that space?
Oh, that's complicated. It's hard to explain.
What was it? Let me start with this. How was it pitched to you? And why did you choose it over being in rehearsals?
Molly was my big mentor in school.
Sure. Brilliant lady.
She's brilliant. And even now, she's working in Massachusetts, and I'm still very connected with her through what she's doing there. So, I started having classes with her my 2nd year. She really,
she's teaching directing?
She was, teaching directing. Okay. So she really changed my mind about how to approach directing and think about directing. And it was interesting because she did have the training of Gerald Friedman, so I got to hear a little bit about that. Yeah,
you learned from one of the kids for sure.
Yeah, which was cool.
Ashley Jansen is kind of that for me. I don't know if you ever got a chance to meet her.
No, but I heard of her.
If you ever get a chance.
I heard good things. So, and Molly is also, she considers herself a maker. She likes to make original pieces in collaboration with actors and other artists.
I am so sorry. I have to pause you really quick. I have a delivery that I have to get. I will be right back. This is scheduled for today. Really quick, I'll be right back.
No worries.
You were saying about Molly Maxner and her approach to directing and how it was different and how you were doing the studio creative space. Did I get that right?
Yeah. Yes. Creative practice.
Damn it.
Creative practice. Almost.
Go ahead.
I don't remember exactly what I was saying, but
we were talking about what drew you to do that instead of rehearsals for main stage productions and stuff.
Yeah, and I said that it was her because she was my big mentor, and so I was having classes with her 2nd year,
right?
And then Right after, remember, I was saying that she also likes making. That's how she also defines herself. Beyond directing, she considers herself a baker, and I like that as well. I also like to make and create.
I use the same language.
Yeah, which I think it's. I mean, this is not particular to my Brazilian culture, but here there's no differentiation between a maker and a director. So it's something that I never really like. I never really thought of myself as like, oh, I want to direct plays. You know what I mean?
Right.
In my upbringing with theater, I always was like, oh, I want to make plays. Like obviously that's what directors do.
Right.
Which is not exactly the case for, all countries. I mean, the US, there's a particular
No, but even in the US, the language gets murky as soon as you leave the exact thing that you're talking about, because the same problem exists here in different ways. And I'll give you an example.
Totally, yeah.
When you leave School of the Arts and you go tell anyone, unless you're talking to someone who works in the theater, you go talk to anyone, someone in film and television, someone who works in a fucking bakery, your grandma, and you're like, oh, I went to college. And they're like, oh, cool. Where'd you go? I'm like, I went to North Carolina School of the Arts. They're like, that's great. What did you major in? Directing. Cool. What films did you make? You've already lost them because you said director. And to them, that means film and television, period. Then you have to explain to them that majoring in directing theater is a job and a major. And they're like, oh. And now you've gotten into semantics and you've lost them. Another thing that happens in my business, which is I work in reality TV, we are all producers. Everybody's a producer. You're a field producer, associate producer, assistant producer, co-producer, executive producer, producer. Everyone's a fucking producer. The one who does the budget for the movie is a line producer. They're not even called an accountant or something. Everybody's a fucking producer. And that word means maker, means someone who makes things happen. We just all have different roles in producing the thing. But my job is directing. I'm a director. I direct television, but I don't say that on my resume anywhere because the words are so particular to each place, whether it's Brazil and theater or it's New York theater or it's LA film and television. Like, you have to put the words aside and get to what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah, totally. And then I think what I see as more of a particularity in the US is that there's a name for making in the US, which is devising in theater. People devise theater. That's what the word that people are using these days.
I don't think I've heard that.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah,
I've been out of the theater for a long time.
So it's pretty much there. Like people in UNCSA, there's even a class called devising. So people
it sounds
use this
pretentious as shit to me. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's just totally. Yeah, I think I don't relate to the word either.
I don't like devising because that sounds like I'm scheming or like. I don't. That's just ugh.
So I feel the word that is used to describe someone who creates a script collaboratively with other people, and instead of bringing a script to a rehearsal room and rehearsing that, you know what I mean? Okay. So Molly, I guess she understands herself, identifies. She also doesn't really like this word devising, but she is more so of a deviser than a director in the sense that she rather create a story than direct one that already exists in the paper.
You know what I think is so interesting, and I want to get your take on this because you have grown up with Portuguese and you're very, very fluent in English, and I want to know what you think about this. We have a habit in English that I don't see happen in other languages the same way. I grew up in a half like Spanish speaking household. My Spanish isn't amazing, but I'm all right. And I have a lot of friends. I work with a lot of people internationally for my job. So I talk to a lot of people who speak different languages. We seem to do this thing in English, specifically in American English, specifically lately, where instead of work to try to change what a word can mean, we abandon it and we come up with a new word and insist that that is what the fuck we mean and not this old thing. And I have the opposite impulse, Marina. I am like, let's just change what that word means for us.
Yeah.
Can't I just be a director who comes in collaboratively and wants to work with everyone to devise a thing and still be a director? Yeah. Do we have to come up with a new word?
Yeah, I always say this to people, like, because it's even funny for me. Like even small things, I always joke about it with like food. Like you have cupcake, you have muffin, you have loaf, you have cake, and like in Brazil we just have cake. Like it's just a word, like the shape of something doesn't necessarily change what it is.
Right.
So like, the other day I was, it happens all the time. Like with my roommate in New York, there's this one time that I saw a mice in the apartment, as New Yorkers do.
Sure.
And I was in the bathroom, sitting in the toilet, and I just saw it like going underneath the door and start to scream. But for me, so in Portuguese, we use the word rato, which is rat, but we also use the word rato to describe all different types of rats. Like it can be a small one, a big one. We just use the word rato.
Right. Almost like rodent for us.
I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Covers it all.
Yeah. So in my brain, the direct translation that I did with rato was rat, because it's just similar in the sound of it, instead of translating it to mice, because it was a mice, okay. But I just start to scream, a rat, a rat, a rat.
Yeah.
So then my roommate comes out, I out of the bathroom, talking to her, saw rats, no. And she can't like join me in the search of the mice until I explain to her whether it was a rat or a mice. She's like, wait, was it a rat or was it a mice? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like,
who gives a shit?
And so moments like this that I realize that the thing that you're expressing, the how precious certain words are.
Semantics,
in the US,
we call them.
Semantics. And it makes sense because the what you have to do in a place like Brazil or even like France or other places in Europe to add a new word to a dictionary, it's tremendous work.
You have to go through the government and shit.
You have to go through the government. It's a whole institution. In the US, you have Urban Dictionary. So vocabulary-wise, English has so many words, because every time you need a new one, you can just make one.
Let me ask you about this.
But also,
it's both helpful.
Annoying.
Okay. Well, here's the problem, Marina, is it could be everything we want it to be and not also be the problems if people could wrap their fucking heads around it the right way.
Exactly.
Because what you want is specificity. I want to tell you that I have cupcakes and not muffins, and I don't want to explain to you that first it's cake and this is the shape it is. I want one word that tells you what I want you to know right away.
Yeah.
Especially
as efficiency.
And as a comedian and an ADD person, efficiency of language and finding new ways to do that is part of the fun of being alive. I don't want to take that away. What I get upset about, and then I start to sound like a crazy right-wing fucking Trumper, Joe Rogan, whatever the fuck you want to call me, and I'm not, is that I don't want everyone's feelings to be so sensitive when it comes to a lack of understanding that you have, that most people that have grown up in America speaking English, especially if they grew up into the 90s and the 2000s, they don't understand that it is going so much faster and at such a bigger volume than it ever has before. And everyone who doesn't speak English is not going to fucking jive with that because they're not used to it all moving so quickly or coming up with a new word every 5 seconds. They just call it fucking cake. We're not even having that conversation. You've also got half the world that's got their gender tied into their language. And in the last few years, it's like they want to have a new conversation about gender, which is great. And we should, but you gotta be a little emotionally patient for everybody and appreciate that this language in America right now is doing something different and weird and special that it doesn't normally do.
Yeah,
and we can't all get our feelings hurt when we don't when someone doesn't pick the right thing.
Yeah, and I think what I observe as a foreigner is that this need to specify each word, especially when it comes to identitary issues.
Right.
It has to do with a want, which I think is a beautiful want, to use language to empathize with people.
Yes. Yes.
So
that's why we have poetry.
Yeah. So it's like this understanding of like, oh, I've had this word used to me before and I didn't like it. So I will pay attention to words that hit other people the wrong way and not do that. So it comes from a beautiful place of just wanting to,
of course,
create more empathy. But what I observe is that that's not people that generate, and I include myself in this generation. I don't think my generation and the generations younger than me are aware that that's the why. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think it's just, you just grew up in it. So you're just seeing it as the way to do it, the way to be empathetic towards others, and not that that's how we have grown up to understand how to do this. And, how we have developed empathy for ourselves.
And it's not the only social benefit of behaving that way. It is the purest. It is the most beautiful to add empathy, to remove pain, to grease the wheels of getting through this difficult life for people. Man, I'm on board with all of those things. You could also condemn and judge other people's language as a way to signal to your peers that you're on the level and that you're participating in the righteous crusade of improving the language of everyone who came before you. And I don't know if that's always something people are aware of. It's like, well, that's why people might be critical of your assessment or your judgment, because we don't know what your intentions are. And it makes it easier to judge everyone's intentions and know what they are when you can sense that people are coming from a place of empathy. Like, you can feel it. And when someone is yelling at you about using the wrong word, that doesn't feel like you're trying to increase empathy. Because if you were, you'd have empathy for me, the person who made the mistake or said the thing that they're not aware is a problem or whatever. Why is your empathy only for the oppressed, but not for the people who are behind the fucking times, whether it's your grandma or me?
Yeah. And that's why I really hope everyone has the chance to become a foreigner at some point in their life.
I love that sentiment.
Yeah, I really believe in it, because I think it teaches you so much about how you're just you, and you're not your culture, you're just you. And yeah, I don't know. I
think you can get a taste of it. You can get a taste of it in the States low key. It's nothing like leaving. I can't even begin to describe that because I've never spent extended time out of the States. So I can't say it's the same thing by any means. But I'll say that I think where I got a little bit of that perspective without doing it was I grew up in a place like Texas. Then I went to New York with no Texas support, really. Kind of like you did from Brazil, which, man, Austin, Texas and New York City, it has a different culture. It's very, very, very different. And if you can drop yourself into a place with no support where the culture is super different, it may not be the same as, because not everyone gets an opportunity or a reason to be a foreigner. That's part of the problem of not getting that perspective. American culture doesn't exactly advocate for go live in another country. They're like, you made it. You're already here, kid. Don't worry about it. And so, but if you can try to, and I mean the same thing in reverse. You've been living in New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, one of these hubs where everybody's kind of all got the group think and you feel like all your friends and you are on the same page. Go live in Nebraska for a little while just to do it, just to fucking do it. That's a hard sell on people. Why would they want to do that? But it is that exposure is huge. And I think forgetting that so many people that we struggle to agree with they're not going anywhere. So it's like, we got to figure something out.
Yeah. And going back to, UNCSA and what it was like to be there as the only international
Right.
student in drama, I just to because I started saying that it was so painful, it eventually it became very interesting and pleasurable because it was fascinating.
Yeah.
Beyond the hardship of it and feeling so isolated and so misunderstood, you start to when you get through that, you start to see people like, oh, you're so different. That's so cool. Like, it's so amazing how different we are. And that was
It becomes a celebration.
really great. Yeah.
I love that. What do you feel like were the cultural things that you experienced while you were at school? Maybe not even, maybe some of it was like American versus Brazilian culture, but maybe it was also just, between the faculty and the students or the vibe on campus. I mean, you showed up right after like a Me Too, blew up the world appropriately. And I imagine that makes its way into a conversation on a campus that's training people for the industry that's currently on fire. And then you go from that to COVID. I mean, Scott's had a hell of a fucking reign to try to captain the ship. Quite a few icebergs that had nothing to do with you guys as far as that goes. What was that like? I mean, those are two big things. And just in general, you're dealing with the change of hands from Carl, who'd only been in charge for a few years.
Yeah. Some of the different things. There are a lot. But I think, I don't know, I think in terms of the training, something that really stood out to me was intimacy choreography. That was, have you heard of it? It's in film too, right?
Oh, yeah. You're talking about the idea of them like planning sex scenes before they do it.
Yeah, and an intimacy choreographer, like a person
right. Someone treats it like a fight scene.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sure.
So that is like completely foreign in Brazil. Like that does not exist.
It's foreign here. They've been doing it for like not very long.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that was very different for me, but interesting because it's useful to learn the language. And then when I work with Brazilian actors, then I have to break the language because then that language doesn't work then, so.
Right.
Yeah, so that was very different.
Who would do that job?
Intimacy choreographers?
Yeah.
Who would do it? You mean
well, if you had a play on campus that had a sex scene in it, someone would choreograph the intimacy, correct?
Yeah, they would either bring someone out from outside, someone who is an intimacy choreographer. Or we also had a voice teacher. Which is interesting
because I feel like how much experience could you have in a job that didn't exist 5 years ago?
Yeah, there are programs to train people, at least back then. Yeah, and there were still.
Oh, I'm sure they're still there.
Yeah, and so we also had a voice teacher who maybe you had lessons with as well. No, Robin.
Oh, no? Voice teacher. Yeah, not singing teacher. Yeah, Robin McNair. Yeah. I never had classes with her. She was hired after I graduated, but yeah, I know who she is.
Yeah, so Robin, she had some experience with that. Cool. And then with time, some directors, not some, actually just, I only know of one who was my peer, the other director in my year. Her name is Acadia. She also decided to get some training, and she does that now as well as directing. So, time people decided to expand the training.
Sure. I love that.
Yeah. So that was a difference for sure. That the devising word, that was very different for me. Because I didn't understand why. That was just we needed a specification for that thing, which for me was just all about theater.
And again, I'm going to walk away unless you have anything else to add, but I'm going to walk away still kind of confused about the devising thing. I don't love the word, and I'm not sure I get the difference.
Yeah.
But it seems like you don't love it, so I don't know if you're the person to explain it to me.
It's just that I don't understand the need for the word, because I wish we could all just like do all of it. But but yeah, I don't think I will be the best person to explain it for you.
As best
But I
I
really enjoyed the
understand. Go
devising
ahead.
classes. I really
Right.
enjoyed the devising class. You know what I mean? Because they were about making, and I like
Uh-huh.
that. But yeah, and I guess a thing that is very different between U.S. in general and Brazil in the theater industry is um, it has to do with this conversation about language,
Mm-hmm.
which is about specialization, something that is specialized. And in the U.S. in the industry, you have everyone have a job, and no one crosses the line between their job and someone else's job.
Right.
That's very, and I think it has to do with language, has to, you have your title, and it has to do with efficiency, because then if everyone knows, what they have to do, then you can get to the end result quicker.
The other big
Um,
element there is worker organization. Like one of the
yeah,
reasons why titles are very specific in America is because despite some periods and different changes, we're a very pro-union country. And when you
I'm
have
sure.
workers organize and unionize, that is where you get very specific job titles, because
Definitely, that makes sense.
you've got room to abuse your workers if they don't have a specific role, and then one day you're like, now
Right.
you're going to also do this, and they're like,
Do
but that's not
this.
why I
Yeah.
signed up, or
Yeah.
that's not what I do, or it's
Yeah.
too much, or whatever. And so getting to those details is a workers protection thing
I
too.
never thought of that, and that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think I think there's a great things about this way of thinking and working, because I say it for myself. I went to school because I wanted to study directing. Period. Like I
Right.
wanted to. Of course, I needed to learn about acting. I needed to learn about all the design elements, but I wanted to be doing that. And at the end, like the school that I chose was the school that could give me that specific training. So I understand the value of that, but I think that just creates a difference between the theater industry in the US and the theater industry in Brazil, because here you just have less resources. So you don't have the budget to hire, a whole team of designers, or, so you just kind of like everyone just does everything. You have more of the culture of ensemble work, in which a theater company, everyone does a little bit of everything, so that's very different.
And
Um,
that's true
yeah,
on a small scale in America. Because when you have
usually,
your own independent production company, whether you're making your own pilot, or you're making a short film, or staging a play, you're right. You're not going to also have a caterer and also have an assistant camera. It's like cameraman's changing his own batteries today, because that's,
usually,
we just don't have the budget to hire each individual role. But that scales all the way up. Like I work on a TV show where I'm essentially writing and directing, which I like. If our show had more money, they'd separate the jobs. You know what I
usually,
mean? Like they'd pay two different people to really focus on that one thing, because that's also what you get. The more you put resources into a single person for a single responsibility, typically, or at least the idea is, the more you get back out of them in that one focus. You spread them
usually,
too thin, and they're going to go too thin on all the different things that they have to do.
yeah,
And you've also you're going to miss out on hiring specialists if you can't afford them, because you're going to have to hire someone who knows how to do costume and makeup and wig and all of that. Well, then you're not going to get that really cool dude that who doesn't know costume and wig, but he's the greatest makeup artist you can possibly find, and you need that on this. You're not going to be able to afford him, because now you got to hire all three people. You know what I mean? And it
yeah.
scales. It's about whether it's big or small. So if you're in Brazil and the productions are smaller and the budgets are smaller, then it just ends up being a all hands on deck situation. And as long as the
Yeah,
culture is mostly cool with that, you can still get shit done. It still
definitely.
works.
And that's the thing. What I observe is that, again, there's good and bad. And I think one of the good aspects of this way of working is that you kind of learn to be more collaborative. You just do,
Yeah.
like you just do because you have to.
I got two. I think I have two more questions. You took classes in DMP while you were in the directing program?
I did, but barely. Like I wish I had more.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I had lighting,
Damn.
which was awesome, and then costume. That was it. I didn't have scenic, which felt horrible.
That's
Yeah,
heartbreaking
ridiculous.
to me.
I know.
I mean, girl, fuck costuming. I know how to sew and grew up with two seamstress grandmas. I'm really good at sewing. I love costuming and I like fashion. Fuck costuming. You need to learn scenic design as a
I
thing because
know.
that's everything. That's a
Yeah,
drag.
I
Well,
know.
I'm sure you're going to find ways to supplement that education and,
Yeah, I
you
will.
get there.
But it was, yeah, but definitely felt like the one part of the program that it was just cut short.
Right. And then I think the last thing that I want to ask is, because this is going to be super different from my experience and it's changed a lot. So I'll give a little context and then I'll get your take on it. One of the things I'm very interested in is how people leave school. And I'm not talking about what interviews they get or where they go to work or get cast, or I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what your mindset is in like March of your graduating year, right before you're about to get there, what the school's putting into your head, what you're putting into your head, what the world looks like, all that stuff's kind of swirling around. And then in like a year after that point, March of the following year, it's been a fucking whirlwind hurricane. Have I moved here and I got this, blah, 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 blah. And that story is usually pretty cool. But that first push is very interesting to me because I think it says a lot about what the education has done to your brain, what it's made you think like. And it's going to tell me a little bit too of how things are different. So like when I was in school, and we talk about this often, Gerald's program was based on the model of the like 80s, early 90s repertory theater ensemble company. There used to be a bunch of them. They were all over in these regional theaters. And if you worked well, got a good skill set, you could audition for one. You'd probably get in if you were pretty good. And you could make a little career living in like Atlanta doing theater. And this was a thing. This was a thing for a long time. And Gerald worked with a lot of these companies in Ohio and at the Guthrie and different places. And he kind of built the program on setting these actors up for this. And the directors were kind of meant to follow the same path. Where you go to these regional theaters, you'll be an AD for a few years, then you'll get to start, Milwaukee, whatever. You'll get to be a director, and then maybe you're an artistic director later. Or if you get really lucky, kid, you go to Broadway. That was kind of the path that was there. My senior year, Gerald had already had his stroke a couple years before. My senior year, Carl was our dean. So Gerald was still teaching us, but Carl had come from New York and he was, early 40s, started his own theater company. So it felt like, hey, we got this new chance, this new link, because the old model's kind of dying out and Jerry never knew how to teach us anything else. We have a new chance to like get in at these new upstart theater companies in New York City and around the country and all this stuff. And that kind of happened. We had our first meeting to really talk about this. And the four of us, me and my three directing peers, sat down with Carl and we went around in a circle. People have heard this podcast, know the story. We went around and we said, what do you want to do? How can I help you? Carl was blatant. He was just like, what can I do? I want to help you guys get started. Just tell me what you're trying to get done. First of all, I love that was even how he approached it. He just asked us what we wanted. And not a lot of places do that. So he asked us. And I went last. First, my friend Steven said he wanted to keep running the company that he had started and keep working on building companies. He was like, cool, I know a lot about that. I'll help you. My friend Wiley was like, I want to work in Shakespeare. I don't know what that means, but I just want to do Shakespeare stuff. He's like, great, I know how to help you with that too. I know lots of Shakespeare people. My friend Daniel was like, I just want a fucking job. I don't give a shit. I need money. I can't walk out of here with this, whatever debt and all this stuff. I need a job. And he was like, no problem. He hooked him up with a job in Sarasota. He worked there for years. Then it got to me. He said, what do you want to do? And I said, I've always wanted to, but I want to work in television. And he was like, ugh. Sorry, man. I don't know. I wouldn't even know where to start helping you do that. But good luck. And if there's ever any, I can write you a recommendation. And I was like, great. I figured it out. So it worked out fine. But Gerald was in no state to help me do anything with the next part of my life. I was very grateful for everything I got for him while I was there. So what was it like for you to be on your way out of this program you signed up with? It took 4 years to do. What did you want to do as far as like, did you want to go back to Brazil and work in theater? Like, it sounds like you're doing that right now. Did you have ambitions about going to Broadway or doing any of these things? And then what was the school's idea for you? Are they like, we really want you to go to Broadway and be a director? Or are they like, what do you want to do, kid? Did they ask? Walk me through that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yes. So what I wanted was a visa to stay.
Hell yeah, girl. Thank you for your
Yeah.
honesty and not dicking around. Right to the point.
Yeah. So maybe Sophia talked to you about this, but
Slightly.
when you graduate as an international student, you get OPT visa, which gives you 1 year to work in the US and show the immigration system that you deserve to stay.
That you matter.
That you matter. That you are extraordinary, like they say in the immigration. Right. So I had that 1 year, and I knew that I wanted after that 1 year to apply for another year for another visa, which would give me 3 years to stay. So
and this would be like a working artist visa, the second one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Got it.
So I knew a lot of people had gotten that visa because I lived in New York for 2 years before going to North Carolina. I knew what the application was about. I knew that it was insane, that I had to have, I don't know how many credits and how many articles written about me online.
Right, of course.
And yeah, so I just, decided to try my best and do all the things that I could in that 1 year and then see where I would be at the end of it, if I could apply or not. Because lawyers, at least the good ones, only take your case if they think you're actually going to get the visa.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they just take your money.
Right.
So I also talked to Carl, who I love. He's a very big mentor for me as well, has been. And he connected me with Kelly Gillespie, who is the casting director for Manhattan Theater Club. And I applied for the internship there, and I got to be her intern for the summer.
Cool.
So
off to a good start.
Definitely. Yeah. So right after school, I moved to New York and started that and did that for a couple of months. And then I also applied for the Kennedy Center Fellowship.
Right.
And I did that. And I was lucky. And yeah, lucky, yeah, a good one. Because I was able to do the Kennedy Center Fellowship while being in New York. Mm-hmm. So I was paid by the Kennedy Center, but I was only working in New York, which was good. And for those who
don't know, normally you would be in DC.
In DC, yeah.
Right.
Which was good for me because of that visa, because I needed so many credits.
You needed to be double dipping, getting stuff done.
To show them that there's so much going on for me.
Yeah, you can't just have one dope ass hookup for a year. You need to get cooking.
You need to. Yeah. So if I was in DC, I wouldn't be able to have that many credits because there's not that much happening in DC as there is in New York. So that helped me because I was able to reach out to a lot of companies and be like, hey, I have someone's paying me to work for theater companies. Can I assist for you? Can I do, so I was able to assist a couple of productions, one for Atlantic, which was awesome. A couple of other ones for Cold Core, which is a smaller theater company in New York, but I really like their work. And then I just did a lot this year. I really did a lot because I needed to. Yeah. I got the NYC Women's grant, one of the 18 out of more than 1,000 applications.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I got a lot of money from them, which is great.
Did you get? Update us on the journey then. So what's the status on the visa?
The visa? I'm applying right now. I got a lawyer who believes in my case, so I should file my application next week.
If all goes well, you'll be in the States when?
So
any way of knowing? You have a window?
Yeah, you kind of have to ask for a date when you want to start your visa. So I asked for January because I think that's smart because I want to be home for January and December. So starting earlier than that wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, I give you a little time to save up and get ready, prepare, lay your foundation. I love that. Well, all of my Visa and MasterCard energy towards your success. I I really hope that works out. I actually work, what the shows that I work on are all about immigrants and all about visas and K1s and K2s and artist visas and travel visas and tourist visas. And so I talk a lot about visas. And I know firsthand how both frustrating, arduous, and quiet it can be. That's part of the problem is more than any. I'm trying to think of other things that are like this. Acting, maybe as a profession. There's so few things in life where you submit yourself so hard to a situation and you get fucking nothing back to make you feel better while you wait or get denied. Like if you don't get approved for a long time, they don't tell you why. If you don't get approved at all, they don't tell you why usually. It gets delayed, they don't tell you why. You just sit in the dark waiting to figure out. And when it's your future and your whole life seems to hinge upon, well, do I build a life in Brazil or do I build a life in America? I don't want to build too hard and then leave one. I mean, that's tough. That's truly tough.
Yeah.
And I admire the shit out of anybody who puts themselves through it. I can't even begin to understand it. I've never been in any situation like that. The most I can relate, I applied for my dad to get disability, which in America is up there with getting a visa. It's like really hard. It's so much paperwork. It's so much proving to them that you're worth their big green stamp. And most people don't get it. And then you got to ask again. And then you sell lawyers. And it's very similar in all those ways. And they tell you nothing. They'll be like, no. Like, why? And you're like, sorry, we're busy. We're on to the next stop. Like, and it's you struggle to feel the humanity in it, in my experience. And I can only imagine that you have similar feelings in that ballpark.
Yeah, definitely. But it's also a blessing and a curse because because it sucks because you just want to stay in the country and work. But also it just gives you such a drive that I don't see in anyone that is not an immigrant.
Yeah.
Or in very few people.
Right.
It's just because you just have to. You just have to.
Yeah.
There's no it's either I don't need this job. You need all of that. And
one of the things that I find that is not present in immigrants that is present in a lot of people I know who are naturalized American citizens, and I'm not judging people too hard, man. I get it. It's a different world. You can't expect people to be like you if they grow up in a different world. That's crazy. That's crazy
exactly.
thinking.
Yeah.
However, one of the things America makes it really easy to do, especially when you're a kid, is give up, is quit.
I mean,
it's easy to quit. It's okay. You'll be okay. You'll eat, you'll live, you'll get by. It'll be all right. Just if it's too much, and ain't nothing wrong with being a victim in America, baby. That's our number one thing. We love saying it was too hard. You made it too hard for us. What the fuck was I supposed to do? It was like impossible. Rather than, I have never heard an immigrant say that in my life. And I know a lot of them. My in-laws are all immigrants. I've never heard them be like, well, we really tried to do this thing and then it was too hard, so we quit. That's not, no, you don't. And I don't know if I was raised by military people or farmers or so. I got a little grittiness in my background. It's not built into me to give up. It's not built into my wife, the daughter of immigrants, to give up. And that's the last thing. You're bleeding on the floor before you're giving up. Like, you don't do it because it's uncomfortable. Give up because you're dying. That's the only thing.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I've seen, letting immigrants give up on their visas. And I'm talking particularly about immigrant artists, who
it's got to be a hard visa to get.
Yeah, I'm talking about artists, not talking about refugees.
Right, of course.
Yeah. So, the only scenarios that I'm giving up that I've seen is just when people realize I actually don't want this, and then it's just so hard because
that's not giving up.
That's not giving up. Yeah. And that's like, no, fuck this. I don't want to be in a country that, where I need to prove so hard that I deserve to be here. And then people just leave and they're happy.
And that's something that I think just in getting to know you in this short period, I can already tell you're like a very self-aware person, and you can tell me I'm wrong, but you just seem like the kind of person where you're, at least at this point in your life, and maybe you've had a different story, but you seem really connected to what you want. You seem really connected to like knowing what's up with you. And I could totally see you getting your dream job and then being like, oh, I hate this. Bye. I'm just not, I thought it would be cool, but then I got here and I did it and it's not what I thought it was going to be. And I have no weirdness about, oh, I failed or I quit or I gave up or I blah, blah. No, I don't like this. I'm going to go do something that I like. You don't seem like someone who would waste your time.
Yeah, I guess that's a quality. I think so.
Is that an accurate assessment, or am I being too nice?
I think so. I think for some reason I know what I want to do.
Yeah. Well, that's a blessing, Marina. That is huge, because I talk to people all the time, people from the school, the same education we got or a version of it. And they're 30, 40, 50.
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's okay too. I don't even have any judgment for that, because it's not like all those people are unhappy people. But I think it does give you kind of a little bonus superpower when you're like, no, I want to do this.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder, because I'm often so sure about the things that I want to do, that sometimes I wonder, like, am I like missing something? Like, am I like believing that I know what I want to do because there's actually a blind spot somewhere and I'm like missing the, like,
do you have a person in your life for that? Do you have like a best friend, parent, relationship, somebody who kind of can be there to be like, you're almost always right, but girl, you're about to hit a brick wall. Like, is there someone who's there for you in that capacity, or do you have to be that person for yourself?
I mean, I have a lot of people in general in my life, but I don't give this role. Yeah.
But that's a specific role to have. I'll answer for myself, just for context. I don't really feel like I had that before my wife that I'm married to now. Like my wife she's a therapist also, so kind of makes it a little easier. A little bit easier. I got a little cop out there. She's very easy to talk to, and and we've just had a conversation about this morning. She was raised conservative Korean traditional culture, and they're not exactly outspoken about their feelings or quick to like express themselves. They think it's their responsibility to hold that shit in and not make it your problem. So me as a like loudmouth white dude, we got to meet in the middle of like, you got to tell me what's going on with you a little bit. I also have to be patient with the fact that you're not as expressive as I am. And that's just like how it's going to be. But I'm someone like you. I mean, we have a lot in common, not just the education, but I'm the same way. I feel like I know what I want, and I'm almost so headstrong that I have to pull the brakes sometimes and be like, wait, am I going too fast? Anyone going to stop me here? Notes? Do I get any notes? Like,
yeah, literally. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and when you put yourself the director, they don't want to give you notes because they think you know all the notes.
Yeah. It's almost like sometimes I just jump ahead.
Yeah.
And I don't think through all the little things that I should be doing to get to the thing. I just go straight to the thing, and I'm like, wait. And then I get there and I'm like, oh, fuck, like there's so much missing,
Can I give you a friendly piece of unsolicited advice as someone slightly ahead of you in time only? And we've talked about this on the podcast a lot, actually. For those listening who want to hear more of this conversation, Graham Bolin and I think, got into a great conversation about this, which is, it sounds like you're dealing with something that I've dealt with a lot in my life, which is I can be very left side of the brain effectively. If I'm an AD, I'll take the notes, I'll schedule, I'll check the call sheet, I'll be all on that shit, make sure everything's right angles, right? Then when you tap my shoulder and like, what do you think of this creatively? I'm like, I got to pull myself out of it and be like, right side of the brain, opinion. And I have to kind of jump back and forth. I don't have like a bipolar ability to just be on both those tracks. Now that I'm further along in my career, I spend a lot more time on the right side. I have people that work for me at my job that are my AD. In this world, they're called APs, associate producers. It's the same thing. My AD checks the call sheet, makes sure everyone's on time, all that AD shit. And I don't practice those skills as much. I used to, and they're still there, But my dream's always been to not have to do that shit. I like the right side. I'm better at this. I want someone to handle this shit so that I can do this shit. And there is nothing wrong with accepting that first ADs, to put a film term on it, or assistant directors in the theater world, are there for a reason. They're so you don't have to think of every single little step along the way. They do that. You're the one who's like, let's go here. And they're like, ma'am, have you thought about these things? And you're like, fuck, I didn't. But let's do that. Now that you brought them up, let's address that before we get there. But the thing is that they don't think that far ahead. They may be on their way to it if they're on the track to be what you're doing. But there's lots of like first ADs in the film world who don't want to direct films. They're first ADs. They want to make sure everyone's on time and the director has everything they need. That's what they're good at.
Yeah.
Find like these people. Yes. Find your stage managers. Find your ADs. Find your people who are excited to help you do the shit that jumps you ahead 8 steps. Because we must, those of us who do jump ahead to those ideas, we must keep doing that. That is our role. That's our job, is to jump ahead. It is everyone else's job, my wife, stage manager, AP, AD, whatever. It's their job to make sure we don't fall off the track. But we can't take the time or we'll never fucking get anywhere. We'll never take big progressive leaps in things. We'll never have big ideas. You have to balance between incrementalism and big progressive ideas. And that's true in politics and art and education and all of it. We need balance, but don't pull yourself back too much because you're worried about the steps along the way. Find other people that will notice that shit for you and point it out. And I'll tell you this, as someone who does their homework the night before a lot, or used to anyway, when I had homework, those big leaps, half the shit that's in between that you're like, oh shit, should I have that? Good thing you didn't matter. Doesn't matter. You could do it without that. And you should try within reason to see what you can skip, because you might find, why have we been doing this whole time? It takes 20 minutes every time we do the thing. And does it help? You know? And the person who makes sure all that happens, the ADs, they never ask those questions. Usually they don't. Their job is to make sure it takes place. It's your job to be like, do we even need to do this anymore? You know, it's a balance. And don't hold yourself to the crucible of being great at both and managing both all the time. I say lean on your strengths. You know, keep working on the stuff you struggle with, but lean on your strengths and then find those people who compliment you. And that's perfect because you're raised in fucking Brazilian theater where everybody pitches in and everyone's ensemble and that's perfect.
Wants to collaborate.
Yes. You've got the whole collaborative mindset built into you. So it's like, it makes sense for you to lean on the shit you're fucking good at and then get everyone to help you out. And it feels great. It feels great when you turn over your shoulder to the stage manager, doesn't it? And you're like, everything's on track and we're good. And they're like, we're good. And you're like, fuck yeah, let's keep making awesome stuff.
Best feeling in the world when you
There's
feel
no better
like
feeling.
The stage manager is taking care of you.
Yeah, it's like they're not even touching you and yet they're massaging your shoulders emotionally. Yeah. You're like, it's all good. You know why? Because shit is on time and the props got paid for and they didn't lose the receipt. Like all that shit. You're just like, it's done. It's done, baby. It's done. And you're like, ugh. Acts of service. That's what directors, our love language is acts of service.
Yeah, totally agree.
Thank you so much for talking to me. I really, really enjoyed this. This was super fun.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
I really, really hope, and I know that everyone listening, all 36 of them or whatever it's going to be, mostly your class, it'll be universal prayers and good thoughts and whatever it is you feel like is helpful for the visa, because, and I talked to Sophia about this too. You know, I'm not going on and on, but I want to make the point again. People like you should not have to work so hard to prove that you're valuable to our society. And on behalf of America, as someone who's never left and has been, my family's like, I'm like fucking 8th generation American. That's how American I am. is atrocious that you're being asked to do that much to prove that you have that much value when you've already like completed a program that is prestigious in our country that was not easy to get into in the first place. You've gotten into more than one program in the country, one that was prestigious, maybe one a little bit less so, but either way, they're fucking still places that said, yes, you have value, come here, learn from us. You did well. You graduated, you left with the thing in hand, and you got a fleet of artists, both faculty and student otherwise, both professional and school otherwise, who were like, if I could stamp it myself, it would be over. What are we talking about? Get her here now. The fact that that's not recognized is an American problem because we don't value arts and artists the way that we should. We don't fund it the way we should. We don't accept immigrants the way that we should. It is a broken system. And all I can say is if you get in, you beat it because it should have been easier. So I hope you beat it, girl. I'm sure you will.
Thank you. Thank you. It means a lot. And it's nice to know that people will hear it and think about it, and give me good thoughts because I think I need it.
Oh, we're all sending it. I promise you. I promise you, because it's also like, I don't think people realize there are immigrants who come from other countries. They come to School of the Arts, they're pickles with us, and then they get kicked the fuck out of the country for one reason or another because their job doesn't lead to a visa or doesn't get approved, blah, blah, blah. And they go home. And they want to be here making stuff with us, and they're not. And I don't think people hear about it because unless you were like close friends with them, which it's also sometimes harder to build closer relationships because of the culture gap, different things happen, or language barrier, whatever, especially in the music school, because they'll accept musicians that barely speak English. They spend a whole 4 years.
Most of my friends in UNCSA were from music.
Yeah. Because it's okay if your English isn't great. Can you play the violin? That's what fucking matters. Like, which makes sense, but it's like, it's harder to connect with those people. And then if they get kicked out of the country, you don't even realize that your buddy who you used to have morning history with or whatever is going through this crazy thing just because you didn't see him in New York. Like, and so I want to tell more of these stories. I really appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing this story. And I appreciate you as an artist and a contributor, a maker to what we're doing, in this business. And I work in a very different version of the business than you do, but I want the right people making stuff. And by right people, I mean people who give a shit about making good stuff and have their heart in the right place. And I can tell in just an hour that that's you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm excited to hear the podcast.
It's going to be good. Thank you very much. And we'll check in with you in a little while and see what you're up to, see how it goes.
Sounds good. Bye.